Yes, that's right. We're doing Persona 5 today. I'm not spoiling anything from the game. I'm not even going to talk about where the song comes from. But it's an 120-hour game. Go play it. It's a good game. This is the first time I'm not showing relevant footage, but it's Persona 5, so take it easy. Take your time. Well, this is Throw Your Mask Away. This is a very, very important song in this game. It's sung by Lin, and it's written by Shoji Meguro, and they are quite a team, Shoji Meguro and Lin. Shoji Meguro has a background in J-pop, and that will become extremely evident as we see stuff like double tonicizations, just a relatively consistent Aeolian palette, and of course, because it's pop music, we even get a little bit of major keys, which is otherwise pretty uncommon. You see, like, throughout all my videos, you almost never see any major keys. There's a little bit of major keys going on here, which is like, whoa, this is not very Japanese. Well, so here's Throw Your Mask Away. This is our function chart on the left. And we're going to take a look at this first line, right? The introduction, So this introduction, if you notice, it's green, blue, green, blue. Green and blue are, green is stable. Blue is rather ambiguous. So there's nothing super tense yet. We're just kind of setting the mood with this 1-flat-6 progression, right? We got a 1-flat-6 vamp, right? That's a very, very common device in Japanese pop music. Just coming out of the gate with something to prime the listener's ears. But, there's an association we have with 1-flat-6, which is 1-flat-6 is epic. I know that word doesn't mean anything anymore, but a 1-flat-6 vamp is epic. Then we have 4 measures of tonic function. Well, that's 4 measures of tonic function. I don't really need to describe what's going on there, but I can play it. It goes the... Got a little bit of chordal harmony there with the just the fourths. On a guitar that sounds really strong. That's why they're doing that, because this is fantastic guitar music. It's as good as guitar music is gonna get. Electric guitar music. Classical guitar, obviously. This is not meant for that style, but so we look at the next section, which is our verse, right? So here's the verse. We have this. So we start out with 1-flat-6, which was the thing that the entire piece started out with, right? And then we get an elaboration. He's going down in these descending thirds, right? Starting kind of like in the middle of this progression, he's going 1-flat-6, 4, and then he goes to flat-7, which is our dominant chord, and then back to 1, right? So he's utilizing the descending thirds progression, are these progressions right here, right? And then over here we have a predominant-dominant chain. In fact, it's the diatonic predominant-dominant chain. I call it the hybrid predominant-dominant chain because it has 2 minor chords and 2 major chords, right? Right, and as it's not meant to transition anywhere. The hybrid predominant-dominant chain is usually used in a diatonic context. So, right, it's just meant to be like a walk up to the 1 chord. And look at where it goes. We have a resolution to the 1 chord right here. So, I mean, that's a normal resolution. I call it a deceptive resolution, but that's only because it's like 5 to 6. It's the normal resolution of a predominant dominant chain, where it goes up by a whole step. So now we have the chorus. The chorus is the most interesting part of this piece. And this is what's going to take the majority of the time to explain, okay? So we have these sections here, which are double tonicizations. Double tonicizations are really odd. And let's listen to it so we can hear what we're dealing with. Right? So we have flat 6, 4, 1, which I guess would be replacing a flat 6, 7, 1. And then he does that double tonicization, which is a double tonicization of flat 6. And then he goes to 5, to A. And then he does it again to get back to the beginning of the line, which is just so clever. So this is called the 2-5-1 of flat 6, which is a really, really nice minor key double tonicization. So you notice that so far we've been in a minor key, and we have now this progression 2-5-1 of flat 6. Well, a lot of theorists are probably yelling, "Oh my God, that's not 2-5-1 of flat 6, that's 2-5-1 of 4. We'll get to that. So here's 2-5-1 of flat 6, right? 2-5-1 of flat 6. Well, 2-5-1 of flat 6 is made out of 3 parts. It's made out of 2, 5, and 1 of flat 6, right? So 1 of flat 6 is just flat 6. That's why you notice I labeled 1 of flat 6 in the diagram predominant function, right? They're all predominant function. They're predominant function because flat 6 is predominant function. They're all based on this part of the function chart, right? So we have like this blue, red, red. That's kind of like how that tonicization works. But we can also do that to the other chords, right? 2 of flat 6 is a minor flat 7, 7, and this 5 of 6, right? This 5, 7 of 6 is like flat 3 dominant 7, which is kind of an odd chord. But in context, it sounds really nice. This chord is very, very unusual, though, and we're going to talk about why. So, minor flat 7 as a chord usually is super, super, super dark. What I mean by that is minor flat 7 is usually borrowed from Phrygian. So you have something like this. Right? That sounds super dark. But let me ask you this question. Does this sound super dark? It doesn't really sound dark at all. I think there's no way this is borrowed from Phrygian. So what's going on here? So we have to do this complicated thought experiment, and this is gonna take a little bit of insane mental processing. So get ready for it. Here's our progression. Right? We have the G minor C7 F. In A minor, it feels like a 2-5-1 of flat 6. Right? And here are the notes of A minor. there a scale out there that has the same notes as A minor? Well, how about this one? We have C major, right? Well, A minor and C major are the same scale. They're just moved over a minor third, right? And we call that relative keys, right? Relative keys have the same exact notes. That's very important. We use the R, usually the R relation, to say that it's the relative key. Now, what would this progression, the 2-5-1 of flat 6, be in C major, in the relative key? Well, it would be this, 2-5-1 of 4. Right? So it feels like they sound pretty similar, like A minor and then the 2-5-1 of flat 6. And C major and then the 2-5-1 of 4. Like, how do you even tell them apart? These things sound too similar. How do we tell these apart? Well, notice that both of these keys and both of these progressions have the exact same chord symbols, right? G minor 7, C7, F have the, is a 2-5-1 of flat 6 in A minor, but it's also a 2-5-1 of 4 in C. They have the exact same chord symbols. That's crazy. Now, what else do they have in common? Well, look, there's a minor third here, just like how there's a minor third from A to C, which is like the relative key relation, right? And then also, they're both predominant chords. Flat 6 and 4 are both predominant chords. You can see I circled flat 6 and 4 on the function diagram. That's because they have the same function. They're both blue. They're both blue chords on the diagram. So if that's the case, these things have a ridiculous amount of things in common. So how do we tell the difference between them? Well, we need to talk about these progressions in a little bit more nebulous sort of way, right? What if we put an A minor before our 2-5-1, our G minor, C, F? We do A minor. Right? Now it feels like a 2-5-1 of flat 6. But if we put a C there, it feels like a 2-5-1 of 4. Now, let's get even crazier. So we have an A minor, and then a bunch of stuff, and then the 2-5-1 here. So we have A minor. Right, something like that. That's a context in which we have A and then a bunch of stuff, and then we have the 2-5-1 of flat 6, right? It sounds like a 2-5-1 of flat 6 because it started in A minor, and then we have a bunch of stuff, and then we have 2-5-1 of flat 6. But let's say there was C and then a bunch of stuff, right? That would give us the 2-5-1 of 4. I'll play something like that. Right now it feels like cozy major key 2-5-1 of 4. Well, what if we have C major and then a bunch of stuff, and then A minor and then a bunch of stuff, and we have the progression? What would that sound like? So something like this. Right. What about that? Well, now we have two contexts. We have A minor here, which is our one chord, followed by a 2-5-1 of flat 6. Right? But we also have C. Right? And then we go to 6. And then we go to 4, right, with our 2, 5, 1 of 4, right? So it's like filling in a descending thirds progression. You see, that's what's going on here. We're filling in a descending thirds progression, which both of these are perfectly valid ways to see this thing, right? So we actually have to make a distinction between what these two things are. Which context is the right context? Well, it depends on context, right? This is the local context, and this is the larger context. And a younger me would say the local context is all that matters. It's the only thing that matters. You've never seen any context other than the local context that has ever mattered before. It's the best context. But the reality is, only the underlying progression is important in classifying usage, right? So we need to analyze the underlying progression. I mean, in this situation that we were in, right, like that sort of thing. We started in C, and then we're doing a descending thirds progression, which a descending thirds progression, in this case, it's the descending thirds progression of a major key. As a result, that makes this in C major. So the larger context is actually more important. This is one of those rare instances where local context is actually less important than the larger context, which is very, very few situations. Well, now let's look back at Throw Your Mask Away. We have a bunch of random stuff, and then we have A minor, and then our 2, 5, 1, and then it goes to E7, which is 5 of A minor. So we have... So we have flat 6, 4, 1, right? And then we land on 1 of A minor, and then we have 2, 5, 1 of flat 6 now, and then it goes to 5 of A. And now we're back in A minor. See, we never really left A minor for that long. We had a 2, 5, 1 of 6, which temporarily put us in the key of F major, which is 6. But then we quickly went back to A minor with the E7 chord, right? So the context here is a flat 6, 4, 1, which is an Aeolian minor key progression, followed by a 2, 5, 1, and then a 5, 7 of A minor, which is obviously a minor key context, right? So, but that doesn't answer the question. Why does this then sound super, super dark? It shouldn't sound super dark if we're in a minor key, right? Wouldn't it make more sense if this was a 2, 5, 1 of 4? Because if it was a 2, 5, 1 of 4, that means that it would be all in a major key, right? So that would explain why it sounds bright. Wouldn't it make more sense if this 2, 5, 1 of flat 6 was actually a 2, 5, 1 of 4 and we're just hearing it in C major? Well, that's not true! It's very much not true. It's super, super not true. And I'll explain why. This is the most important thing going on. 2, 7 of flat 6, right? So that minor flat 7 chord is being used in the context of flat 6. In other words, this chord is a 2 chord. And a 2 chord is a super bright chord. In fact, the 2 chord in a major key is the most bright minor chord possible. You can't get a brighter minor chord. Try to play any context in music where you get a brighter sounding minor chord than a 2-7. It's impossible. It just doesn't exist. The thing that makes this minor flat 7 chord bright is the fact that it's a 2 chord in a major key. And that major key is F major, not C major, right? The brightness is coming from flat 6. it's not coming from C. That's an extremely important distinction because this screws up so many musicians, right? This one little thing is the result of so much incorrect theory research. There's research into popular music, and they take a piece that's entirely in a minor key and they say it's in a major key because they want to argue that this one part is a 2-5-1 of 4 and not a 2-5-1 of flat 6. For some reason, music theorists don't want to admit that 2-5-1 of flat 6 is a real thing. And as you can imagine, it's mainly because popular music theory is in its infancy and most people haven't figured it out yet, right? I mean, there's been incorrect analyses of the Beatles and random songs where they still think for some reason that 2-5-1 of flat 6 is just an impossible harmony. I don't understand why it's so prevalent, other than the fact that people just haven't done their homework. They haven't done their listening, and they don't know music good enough in order to be able to understand this concept. That it's not coming from C major, it's coming from F major. It's coming from flat 6 of A minor. So there are theorists who completely deny that tonicization, that double tonicization exists in the first place. And then the next level, which, I mean, at this point, you can hear that something's going on, right? You hear that 2-5-1 of 4 is a bright sonority that is very similar to 2-5-1 of flat 6. And as a result, you sort of think, oh, well, that's why it's bright. That's why I hear it. And then later on, once you learn a little bit more about, listening to popular music and how the ambiguity of keys work, you start to say, well, it's always a 2-5-1 of flat 6 if it's next to an A minor chord. But then you realize that there are some contexts where that's not the case. And the underlying progression is the most important thing. The important thing here is that a 2 chord is a bright chord. And in this context, this minor flat 7 chord is functioning as a 2 chord in flat 6, in F major. That was very dense. And I apologize if it was too much. But it was very important to go through all of that to give you context on why this progression is so difficult to talk about. Because there are so many people who get this wrong that I had to clear this up for general audiences, right? If you didn't understand everything, that's perfectly fine. But luckily, the whole rest of the piece is really simple, so there's no more complicated stuff. You can just relax, okay? Well, now we have 3 measures of tonic function. Ah, such a breath of fresh air. And then we transition to the bridge. The bridge is a part of the piece that's actually in C major, right? I just made that whole argument why the previous progression was not in C major, and now we're in C major. So we have this really surprising move to C major that just happens out of nowhere with no preparation. Sounds like rock, like 50s rock music, rock and roll. Right? Okay. So we have this 1, 2, 3, 4. So I usually call a 4-3-2-1 a Sonic the Hedgehog. Why do I call it a Sonic the Hedgehog? Because of that. But they're doing that backwards here. They're doing a Sonic the Hedgehog in reverse. So they're doing not 4, 3, 2, 1, but they're doing 1, 2, 3, 4, which is really weird. And then it's followed up with a deceptive cadence modulation. Now, my schema has way more stuff than it needs to be. So we're just going to kind of fill in what stuff this progression is doing. So like, for example, there's no flat 6, it's a 2 in this case. 2, 5, and then 6. And it usually follows up by a flat 6, flat 7, 1 in the new key. But in this case, it's not a flat 6, flat 7, 1. It is a flat 6, 4, 1. So we have... See how the schema just works, right? You know, if you're dealing with pop music, this is the correct schema for you. You just fill in the right chords. And then we get our chorus again. Nice, right? So that is Throw Your Mask Away. That is all we have for today. But I have important information for you. So I use all these chord charts like these ones in the video, right? But I've never given them out. So in order to make these chord charts, I use this application called IReal Pro that is like very popular among teachers and students at the Berklee School of Music in Boston, which at some point in my life I had attended. And I actually have the IReal Pro files for these. And if you are a jazz guy who has IReal Pro and you want these charts, like all the ones from my videos, I will have them up for sale on my Ko-Fi. You can just choose the tier and get access to all of them, because I want these to be more accessible than... Like, yeah, they're transcriptions and they're fantastic transcriptions, but I think that people need to have these in a more accessible format. And I have to charge a little bit for them because it does take a long time to make them, right? But I just wanted to say that I'm going to start doing that. By the way, I have a Ko-Fi. You don't have to buy any of my charts. You can just donate to me if you want. If you like this sort of thing. I'm doing this for free otherwise. So if you care about video game music theory and you take this music seriously, well, this is your time to support someone who takes it seriously and wants to actually explain how it works. So that's it for today. I make videos every 2 weeks and occasionally post silly videos of me playing instruments and stuff. And also, thank you for watching. I know this is a relatively new channel, and we're going places. We're moving quickly, and we are gaining a little bit of traction, and just about as fast as I thought we would. I want there to be a growing community here of music theorists who are aware of the research that's out there. You know, music theory research is still going on. You know, I'm a career music theorist who has worked at colleges in the past. So, and I'm passionate about this music, and a lot of other people are passionate about this music. It's worth talking about. It's, you know, some of the greatest art of our time. So don't let it die. Keep supporting it. Keep playing it. Bring it around. Be the phantom thief you always wanted to be. And that's it for now. I'll see you later. Take it easy and good evening.